There's a question we have to ask tonight. It is a question that ends in our nation's capital, with a man who once fought in our name, but it started half a world away, in Afghan villages most of us will never see. Rahmanullah Lakanwal, an Afghan evacuee brought to the United States after the fall of Kabul, has been charged with shooting 2 National Guard members on duty in Washington, D.C. One of them, Specialist Sarah Beckstrom, has since died of her wounds. And now reports say Lakanwal may have once been part of a Zero Unit, a clandestine Afghan strike force built, trained, equipped, funded, and guided by the CIA and the U.S. Special Operations, an assassination unit. He fought for us. He was evacuated from Afghanistan by us, and he killed one of our soldiers on the streets of our capital. So tonight we ask, what happens when you train men as assassins and then bring them home? By the end of this episode, you will learn the answer, and it's far darker than anyone wants to admit. Tonight, we go into the dark with the Zero Units. Much of what you're about to hear comes from journalist Lynzy Billing, whose own mother and sister were killed during a night raid in Afghanistan, long before the Americans arrived. She returned as an adult to investigate. She spent years of travel all through the remote valleys of Afghanistan. She sat in burned out homes talking to the survivors. She talked with tribal elders, with doctors who treated the wounded, and the coroners who handled the dead. She spoke with U.S. Special Operators and former Zero Unit fighters who had participated in the night raids. Her ProPublica investigation, called the Night Raids, is the deepest look anyone has ever taken into these units. And what she found was a war inside the war, one hidden from almost everyone. At the beginning of this episode, I asked whether training a man to kill for you means he remains a weapon long after the war ends. We'll return to that question before the end, and when we do, the story of the Zero Units will give you the answer. For now, we begin where the night never ends. Before the shooting even starts, the night gives a warning. A mother wakes, not from a sound, but from an absence of sound. The air feels wrong. The shadows tilt. The dogs outside have gone silent. She sits up on her mat. Her children are beside her, breathing those small, fragile breaths of exhausted innocence. In the next 30 seconds, her entire world will end. Dust trembles at the cracks of the door. Then the light, white, violent, rips through the dark. Then the boots. Then the shouting. Then the screams, then the shots. By sunrise, everything warm in her home is cold. The Zero Units came looking for someone who wasn't there, but the family was, and no one has ever explained why they died. Tonight, we follow the path that led to that doorway, and hundreds like it. We follow the story of the Zero Units, and along the way, we see the shadow of Vietnam's Phoenix program, which was another CIA-directed kill or capture machine that left thousands dead in the name of counterinsurgency. The truth is uncomfortable, but simple. The CIA ran Phoenix, and decades later, the CIA ran the Zero Units for the same reasons and with the same results. Were they successful? Ask yourself who runs Vietnam and Afghanistan today. After 9/11, the United States needed something fast, something lethal, something deniable. So inside briefing rooms, inside classified budgets, inside the imagination of men who believed the ends justify the means, the CIA helped build 4 strike forces, simply called Units 1, 2, 3, and 4. Each was tied to a different region of Afghanistan, but all of them were tied closely to Langley. They were recruited locally, trained intensively, supplied with U.S. gear, funded in cash, guided by U.S. operators, and tasked with night raids, kill or capture missions, and with hunting Taliban, ISIS-K, and insurgent leaders. They were meant to be a scalpel. Afghanistan made them a sledgehammer. Picture this. Your door is gone. The air is dust. Green laser sights cut across your walls. Men in black masks pour through the opening as your children scream. You're pushed to the dirt. Your oldest son's face is pinned to the courtyard wall. Then a gunshot, and the night takes him. This is not Phoenix in 1968. This is Afghanistan in the 21st century, and these are the Zero Units. Why did these raids happen? Billing documented at least 452 civilians killed by just one Zero Unit over 4 years. But how did it happen? It happened because targets were identified by phone metadata, drone imagery, unverified informants, and people with tribal grudges running off of rumors, cases of mistaken identity, and the fact that every young Afghan man out in the sticks carries a rifle. One U.S. Ranger told Billing, "We thought 8 people were inside. There were 30, most of them kids." But the mission went ahead anyway, because civilian casualties were pre-approved in the planning process. Military decision makers literally baked projected collateral damage into their calculus. The number of women and children who might die if the raid went wrong. It wasn't a failure of procedure. It was the procedure. The Zero Unit fighters were not monsters. They were men from the same valleys they raided, often fighting men they grew up with, speaking the same language as the people they killed. And for the most part, they were trying to liberate their countries from the monsters that are the Taliban. One fighter told Billing, "The first man I killed, I felt like a hero. The 100th, I was no longer a person." Another said, "The Americans do not lie awake at night with the guilt. We do." And when the U.S. withdrew, some were airlifted out, but many in the Zero Units were abandoned, left behind to face the Taliban with no airlift, no allies, and no escape. The Zero Units were not the first. In Vietnam, the CIA built Phoenix. Night raids, interrogation centers, targeted killings, informants with grudges, civilians caught in the crossfire, political neutralization, body counts rebranded as success. Sound familiar? Phoenix scarred Vietnam. The Zero Units scarred Afghanistan. And the methods were nearly identical. One veteran of Afghanistan told Billing, "You kill a man who wasn't Taliban, tomorrow 3 of his relatives become Taliban." The math of war hasn't changed, only the landscape. Let's return to the question. What happens when you train a man to kill for you and then bring him home? At the end of the war, many Zero Unit fighters were evacuated into America, including men who had spent years in a kill-capture program with almost no oversight and almost no psychological support. They were hardened by trauma. They were haunted by what they had done. They were dumped in a strange country without support and then scattered into American neighborhoods with no briefing to local authorities, no monitoring, and in many cases, no mental health care available. Which brings us back to Rahmanullah Lakanwal, the man at the start of this episode. Trained by us, armed by us, supported by us, evacuated by us, and now accused of killing American soldiers on American soil. The question we asked at the beginning now has its answer. When you train a man to kill for you, you had better be absolutely certain you know who he is. When the war is over, because the darkness we outsource has a way of coming home. This is the legacy of the Zero Units, a secret war built in the dark, fought in the dark, and buried in the dark. Until Lynzy Billing heroically forced the world to see it. We tried to hide what happened. We tried to bury the truth. But the truth always survives. And now the truth has reached our own streets. This is Blue Steel Heroes, and these are the stories the darkness never once told. If you enjoyed this episode, please turn on notifications, subscribe, and hit like. And we'll see you next time.